I'm Shanna Martin, host of the Tech Tools for Teachers podcast, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows on the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Hey, welcome back. Steve here, and today I'm talking with Sonja Williams. She is the owner and chief business consultant at Passionate About Diversity, LLC. She is also the author of the book, which is our focus today, A Kid's Guide to Life Choices. So much to learn, so much to think about. Thanks for joining me. And by the way, before you go, it'd be so cool if you helped out the podcast. How could you do that, you ask? Glad you asked that question. Well, 1, you could tell a friend and share links. 2, you could go to my website and leave a review and subscribe. And 3, you could click on the link on my website homepage where it says Buy Me a Coffee. And by doing this, you could donate $1 or $2 or $5 or more to help me address the costs associated with producing the podcast. That would be so cool. Thanks for listening. You are awesome. Enjoy the show.
It means that first, you have a pretty healthy respect for money, and you realize that money is just a tool to get the things that you need. Understanding how to use it and understand how cash flow works. Money that you earn is money coming in, and money that you spend is money going out, which is the true meaning of cash flow. Cash is flowing.
It's the Education Podcast, your favorite show, with lots of groovy guests and they share what they know. So crank it up to 10 and let your neighbors know that here's another show with Dr. Steve Milletto. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. Teaching, Learning, Leading K12. With Dr. Steve Milletto.
Sonja Williams is the owner and chief business consultant at Passionate About Diversity, LLC, an Atlanta-based 18-year-old consulting operation with expertise in human capital management and diversity and inclusion. Sonja is a member of the Society for Human Resource Managers, SHRM, is a guest instructor for the Institute for Diversity Certification, and has more than 20 years of corporate experience in accounting and human resources, specifically diversity and compliance. She holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Mercer University and an MBA in technology management from the University of Phoenix, Atlanta campus. Sonja is the author of The Introduction to Diversity and A Kid's Guide to Life Choices. In addition to human capital management and diversity and inclusion work, Sonja has a passion for teaching youngsters about the importance of finances on everyday decisions in life in general. To that end, she has been a guest facilitator and trainer for Atlanta Public Schools Project for a Day, where she trained several volunteers from the business community to deliver the content for the Big Picture middle school and My Potential Life high school financial literacy programs. She also penned From Start to Finish, But Before I Retire, a quick read designed to give middle school-aged children a look at what life has to offer and related responsibilities. She was a top fundraiser for 4 straight years for the Multiple Sclerosis Walk of Georgia. Our focus today will be Sonja's book, A Kid's Guide to Life Choices. Sonja, thanks so much for being on the show, and say hi to everyone.
Hi, and thank you so much for having me on your program today. I thought it was really interesting, the platform that you have set up and the members of your audience that normally tune in. So I'm really excited to talk about the book and about me and learn more about you guys as well.
Well, awesome. It's just great to have you here. And I want to start with this. I read in your bio, in addition to human capital management and diversity and inclusion work, Sonja has a passion for teaching youngsters about the importance of finances on everyday decisions and life in general. What inspired you to pursue teaching young people about everyday finances?
Well, a couple of things. I don't actually have any biological kids, but I do have lots of nieces and nephews. That was one thing. And my oldest nephew is also named Stephen. So I won't forget your name ever.
Nice name.
But, Steve and I used to spend lots of time together when he was a youngster. Specifically, we go shopping on the weekends, and he loved Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So we were in a store called Turtles that used to be located in the Lenox area. And he just wanted me to buy him a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. It was a video at the time. So I said, well, Steve, I don't have the money with me to buy that. He said, well, just write a check. I said, uh-oh, he's got a problem now because he thinks that Auntie is just going to write a check for everything.
Nice.
And that's all there is to it. So make a long story short, when we got home, I asked him, well, well, how much the tape was? I think it might have been $10, which was fine. And I said, well, Steve, let's play a game. So I enlisted the services of his two grandmothers, my mother and his other grandmother. And we talked about the fact that Steve was now an adult and he has a house and he has utilities and has to buy groceries. So his one grandmother was the utility person. The other one was the person that collected all the rent. And after I gave him his money, I said, well, Steve, this is how much you paid for rent. This is how much you pay for gas. This is how much you pay for electric. And this is how much you pay for the phone bill. I said, well, how much money do you have left? He says, I have $3 left. I said, well, do you have enough money to buy your video? He said, no. I said, well, that's what Auntie was trying to tell you. So writing a check to the bank when you have no money is not going to get you what you need, and it'll also land you in a lot of trouble.
Very much so.
But he was 5 and he understood that. That was one incident. But the other thing that inspired me to write this book and another one was that when I worked for Georgia Pacific Corporation and Blue Links, my division later became Blue Links Corporation, we had a mentoring program with Washington High School, which is located just west of downtown. The kids in the class were anywhere from 15 years old to probably 18. And I came up with a game called My Potential Life. And I realized in that game, what we were doing was I would come up with a bunch of life situations, as well as career cards and also salary cards. They had to pick their career card and their salary card blindly. Because even though you may go to college, you might not end up in the field that you went to school for, which has happened to a lot of people that I know. So as we were going through the situation cards, everybody was affected by whatever situation card one of the students picked. So I noticed when they were picking the cards, how many of them were negatively impacted by the things that happened on these situation cards and how they reacted to it emotionally. And I tell people all the time that money is very emotional. So you have to have a pretty healthy respect for money, because it can make you do some really crazy things. Well, at any rate, the experience that I had with those kids, in addition to my nieces and nephews, let me know that there needed to be some type of resource out there for kids to read on their own, and also for them to read with their parents, to help guide them through what kinds of things you should be thinking about, what kinds of things you're feeling as you grow older. So that was a long story about what kind of inspired me.
No, thanks for sharing. It's an awesome story. It's funny because I had, coming out of high school, I kind of had, because the way my dad involved me in things that he did around his business and stuff like this, I kind of had a pretty decent understanding, and I had a part-time job at a grocery store and all kinds of stuff like that. But I'll never forget, after I graduated from high school, I went to a military school to get my commission in the Army as a second lieutenant. And at that military school, they made you could only have so much cash on you, and you use that in this little restaurant and sandwich shop and stuff like that, and arcade. But they made you put it into a checking account, and so they wanted you to pay and learn how to balance a checkbook and use that. And I was amazed at the number of young people who thought that I never thought this would be real, but I saw people thought that just because if they had checks, that meant they still had money.
Exactly.
Like, what the? It's nice. It's like,
and that's funny, because you just don't think about it until a situation occurs and it slaps you in the face. It's like, oh my God, what are they thinking?
Exactly. It's crazy. All right. So we're going to be talking about financial literacy here. So what I'd like to do is, when you hear those terms, what is it that it means to you?
It means that first you have a pretty healthy respect for money, and you realize that money is just a tool to get the things that you need. Understanding how to use it and understand how cash flow works. Money that you earn is money coming in, and money that you spend is money going out, which is the true meaning of cash flow. Cash is flowing. And I also want people to understand that just because I say financial literacy, that does not automatically mean that you go out and buy a bunch of stocks and bonds, which you have no idea what those things are, but you do it because somebody showed you that that's what you need to do. So understand how you feel about money, how you make decisions on spending money. Because some people that I know, they get really, really anxious about having to spend a dime on anything. It's like, I'm going to keep all the money that I have. Well, that's not going to help you grow, and it's not going to help your money grow if you keep every dime that you ever make. So let's understand what it is you need money to do, and how you decide how you're going to spend it. Is it something that you need or something that you want? And by the way, which one of those things comes first? You may love to go on vacation, but if you haven't paid your house note, you might want to put that vacation on the back burner, or at least postpone it until you have enough money to cover both.
Perfect sense, and it makes a lot of sense. And one of the things that there's a need for understanding everything that's covered in that. And, you know, it is interesting how, so just as a note, this didn't have to do with stocks and bonds, but the first time I got my first teaching job, I'm sitting in this huge room with all these new teachers that are getting ready, and because it was a very big county, and we have a discussion from HR people about forms that we need to fill out, right? Now, you have a little HR background there.
That's familiar, yeah.
There's like 170 some odd people in this room, and I'd never had to really fill out these forms. And as I'm in the Army and stuff like this, they really had someone who walked you through the forms and stuff like this. And well, it was just quite interesting because I'm sitting next to a guy who he says, "Don't worry about that. I'll help you." He goes, "I know how to do this stuff." I had a lot of tax at the end of that first year. So one of the things I learned was you may not want to listen to the guy sitting next to you.
Right.
But, you know, it's just amazing. So the same thing with stocks, whatever, just because someone says it's a good thing to do, maybe you might want to get better advice than that guy sitting next to you. So I don't know. That was a lesson.
Yeah, that may not be your cup of tea.
Right, exactly. All right. So let's talk about some pitfalls. I mean, what financial pitfalls do you think our youth need to learn about in order to navigate that might be waiting just to, trip them up as they're starting to learn this financial literacy stuff?
Well, the biggest pitfall that I've ever run into is that I love to give. And I love to give to my nieces and nephews, and always have. My oldest nephew, as I said, years ago, when he was young, we spent a lot of time together, but he is now a grown man who is, I think Steve will be 37, 38 in September. My youngest niece will be 24 this year. So I love to give to them, but one of the pitfalls I have is learning to say no to them when they want something, or whenever they did want something, learning to say no. It was hard for me because I didn't want them to grow up not understanding and experiencing other cultures and understanding other people. So I didn't want them to be, ignorant of that. So I would take them on trips. We, go out to dinner, sample different foods and all of that, but it's saying no and knowing when to say no and knowing when to allow them to trip up. So with that said, one of the tools that they should learn how to use is a budget. We'll just call it a budget, but really it's a sheet of paper that says, okay, here's how much money I have coming in, here's how much I have going out. If they don't see it in black and white, it's sometimes hard for them to really understand how their money actually flows. It's also hard for them to understand that from the time that you're a little person, 3 to 5 years old, and you're the cutest thing that's ever walked the face of the earth to your parents and friends, they just want to give you money. As you grow older and become less cute, yeah, that doesn't happen as often. So you have to start learning that, okay, I've got to work for money. And that a lot of times means I'm doing chores around the house, or a great favorite job for a little person is babysitting, yard work, dog walking, all of those things to earn money. And when you see how much money you actually are able to bring in, if you've never had a bunch of money in front of you and you start seeing all that money coming in as cash, it's like, wow, I've got a lot of money. I can spend it on anything. I can buy anything I want. And then you start thinking about, well, I want that great pair of Air Jordans. And so those Air Jordans cost $250. So how long are you going to have to wait
Right.
to save up enough money to get those Air Jordans? And then you start thinking, well, Air Jordan may not be the thing for me. Maybe I should just go back and get some Converse or something like that. So that's the pitfall for me that I've always come up against, is learning when to say no, and and having them understand when you say no, and how much is it worth to have those pair of Air Jordans that you think you wanted.
That's so awesome. It's great learning right there. I know when the biggest surprise for me, and so it was interesting when my own sons are in their career fields and stuff like this, but when they first got those initial paychecks and you realize there's a chunk that's taken out by something called the government, it's like, wait a second, and
yeah.
But it it is so important when learning how to say no, especially because I remember Turtles. Turtles was a great store, and I used to like to go there and like a kid in a candy store, but I actually couldn't leave with much of anything. But I would go in there and go, yeah, if I had the money, I'd go buy this and this and this and
Right.
this. Nice. All right, so let's talk a little bit about Generation Z and money. What type of relationship do they have with it? What do you think? What are you thinking about them?
Generation Z. Generation Z are the people that were born, 1997 to 2012, at least that's what Pew Research says. So they would be anywhere from, I guess, 12 years old to 27 years of age, I think. So my youngest niece is a Gen Zer. She just graduated from UGA last May. She had a awesome internship with a company called Zurich. And now she works for Aetna CVS. So with her parents, I can say, were great at giving her a debit card and kind of explaining to her that, okay, you have some money in the bank, but you don't have all of the money that you need to do everything. You've really got to watch how you're spending your money. I think that as long as they have somebody to explain money in the bank to them and understanding that this is your responsibility. I'll go back to the UGA story when she graduated. She had to be responsible for the food that she was going to buy or cook, go out to eat. And she had to understand that, well, even though she went to school on the Hope Scholarship, the Zell Miller Scholarship, she still had incidentals that were not going to be taken care of by that scholarship program. So she still had to learn, I only have this much money in the bank, and I really can't buy that great pair of Jimmy Choo sandals that I wanted. So I'm going to have to leave those where they are. But I'll say this about Generation Z as I will about any other generation, because they have the same issues. It depends not just on the generation that you're born in and how much technology you have access to, but it also depends on the socioeconomic environment that you're born into and that you exist within. Because there have always been people, I'm a boomer, actually a really early stage boomer. I probably identify more with Generation X than with the baby boomers. But there have always been people in each generation that have had very wealthy parents, could buy anything that they wanted, all the way down to people that, well, my dad has a very menial job, and so does my mom, and we can only afford things at this price point. So you've always had that, whether it's Generation Z, baby boomers, Gen Xers, and you always still have that, no matter which generation you're in. So they're not really different from any other generation. The only thing that I think that is really different for them is the amount of technology they have at their disposal. I mentioned checks earlier on in our conversation. We used to write checks. Nobody does that a lot anymore. It's the debit card. So a lot of people in Gen Z, they really never saw a checkbook unless they, happened to be sitting there with their parents if they were writing checks or paying bills and writing a check out for them. So they don't know anything about checks.
No.
So that's kind of my comment on Generation Z and everybody else in between.
I appreciate it. Isn't that amazing though about the checks, because it has become an area that predators prey on, and so which has also encouraged it to start making a quick, go away type moment. And it's amazing to me because not only may they not have a possibility of understanding check writing and check balancing and the checkbook keeping and all that sort of stuff, then you go into a world also where more and more we're starting to see places, and I'll use an example. We're in the Atlanta area. There's a little theme park out on the west side called Six Flags, and when you walk into Six Flags, if they don't want cash anymore, so once you get through the door on your electronic tickets, or maybe you have a paper one that gets you through the door, they scan, but then if you have cash, they tell you to go to this little machine that looks like an ATM, and you have to go in there, put the cash in it, and then it gives you a little plastic card, and you use that to spend at restaurants and stuff like that. And I thought that was interesting. I'm a Braves fan, and at the Braves, yes. By the way, lately I keep running into people who are in like places like New York and Philadelphia, and I'm like, no. Those are wrong teams. Anyway, but we have one of the things that at the Brave Stadium, that more and more they're having these. They want you to use either your phone to pay or some sort of credit card or a debit card to pay. They even have a couple of stalls where you walk in, you scan your phone and your card, and you walk in and you buy you grab something, and then when you walk out, it charges your card. And the only people they have that are working it are the people to explain to you how to get in and how to leave, and so that nobody else walks in there and leaves with something so you get charged for their thing. But it's like you see more and more of this happening where you're going to have a good understanding of, at least in a checkbook, you're writing down as you take money out. You put money in on the plus side and you take money out. If you're using that card all the time, that's
I'm glad you brought up the Braves, because I am a huge baseball fan and I love the Braves.
Nice.
As a matter of fact, I'm planning to. Well, actually, I saw them in April in Houston, Texas. I have my youngest stepdaughter lives in Houston. So we were able to see the Braves and Houston Astros, and more stadiums are becoming cashless,
right,
especially if you're going up to the concession stand. And I actually love that idea. In contrast, there were a couple of Subway restaurants that were set up to be cash only and not, they won't take any credit cards or anything like that. And I'm thinking in my mind, are you trying to be robbed? Is that the reason that you're going in that direction? Because I don't understand it if you're doing it that way. But I was also thinking that one of the reasons they were doing that was to, I shouldn't say hide income so they wouldn't have to pay taxes or anything like that. But you have to, it just causes you to think. But kids don't understand the checkbook thing. So the budget is the thing that they need to start with, so they can start watching and writing down and seeing it in black and white. This is how much I have coming in. This is what's going out. And oh, by the way, this is how I spend my money. But now they also have all of these different apps, like I think it's called Rocket app, that looks at all your subscriptions that you
Yes.
have, and if there are any things that you're not using anymore, you can just go ahead and get rid of them. I said, that's really a fabulous idea, but I wonder how much they really understand about uh, where this money is coming from, and if they're really going to have a whole lot of extra because they stop these particular subscriptions. Maybe yes, maybe no. So we'll see.
Right. It does make you wonder, because it's something that with these apps and with I guess at least this sounds bad, but at least with the writing in a checkbook, you see the coming and going. If you're not monitoring your statements from your credit card or your debit card, woohoo, and especially with how easy it is. I mean, I see people all the time, they walk into this restaurant or they go get a coffee or something like this, and they're just flashing that plastic.
Yep.
And it's like, all right, I hope it's all going well. So, all right. So, something that you focus on when talking about kids, you call the 3 pillars. What are these, and what importance do they play in a child's life?
The 3 pillars are: have a plan, number 1. Number 2, take responsibility. And number 3, think before you act. And these aren't only important to kids, they are important to adults as well. For me, they're important all throughout my life, because just about everything that I do, I have a plan for it, even coming down to the meals that I'm going to eat for the day. And I say that not because it's a financial issue, but you're getting older and your metabolism slows down. And if the more you eat during the day without keeping check on what it is you're going to eat, can cause the pounds to pack on. And so, as I said, as the older you get and your metabolism slows down and you're not as active, it's a little harder to get rid of those pounds than it was when you were in high school or in elementary school. Because I was a gymnast in high school, so I could eat whatever it was I wanted to eat, even though I shouldn't have. That, and I know that now, because whatever it is you put in your body does impact how well you're able to perform physically. But everything needs to have a plan. And the reason I say take responsibility is because this is something that is going to impact you. So you take responsibility for the decision that you made. It's not to be blamed on somebody else. Somebody else might have influenced you, but it's your responsibility. So don't try and take this as an opportunity to say, well, this didn't turn out the way I wanted it to, so mom, it's your fault, or dad, it's your fault, or best friend, it's your fault. And think before you act. When I think about thinking before you act, I think about the traffic circles. I love traffic circles, and I love that we are making better use of them here in the greater Atlanta area, because it causes you to stop and think. Even though you're only going right in the traffic circles, you have to stop and think. Whereas when the traffic circles weren't there, you might be tempted to say, well, you know what, I can go ahead and make that left turn. I know I can beat that tractor trailer that's coming this way. So it's like, no, you probably can't. And it might have a disastrous outcome if you don't beat the tractor trailer. But you have to think before you act, because there are consequences to everything that you do. You may not see them immediately, but there are consequences. So have a plan, take responsibility, and think before you act. And the earlier we start teaching our little people about that, the more it becomes like old hat to them. So they'll do that with everything that they're enter into.
Well, you got that right. Those are awesome. And I got to say this, because you mentioned 2 things that come to mind. And those circles, I'm very thankful for them. And my kids actually think that I just find them out so I can go around in circles for a while or something. But they are. What's amazing to me, though, is when people some of them just approach those things like they're on the interstate or something like this. I'm going to fling myself through here like there's some physics experiment or something like this. It's like, okay, it's meant to help you not have an accident. And,
right.
it's like, and instead we got I mean, I think it's working really well, and I think that's why I keep seeing more and more of them. But it is pretty wild when you almost want to say, okay, I think you need an instruction on how to do the circle. All right, the rest of us are good. You go over there and you just go around, do something else. But the other thing, when you talk about being responsible and so forth, one of the weird things that's happened in the last bunch of years and associated with sports is that professional sports have allowed themselves to become connected with online gambling, and which I think is funny, and funny in a way that you've had a couple players recently, one who's been banned for life now because
he froze. Yes, I know him well.
It's like, and I look at some of this stuff that's happening with these the gambling online, that it's all they have to do is they have to have the app, and I'm not sure what type of proof they have that they're of age also, but somehow they say that they prove that you're 21 or older, but there's a lot. I mean, talk about something that could just be so much easier than if you had to go to the. This is old school. You had to go to the track, or you had to go to the bookie, or you had to do something like that. Instead, it's right there in your phone. And talk about being responsible.
Yeah, you have to be.
Yeah, it's so much so. Those are so important. I appreciate it. All right, something that you focus on is that a young person should develop strong values. What do you want young people to think about when thinking about values? I mean, what are you thinking about in that use of that term?
When I think about values, I think about what's important to me, what kind of person I want to be, how I want people to think about their interactions with me, and the kind of impression that I leave upon them. But I want to be able to look myself in the face, in the mirror, and say, you know what, you did the best that you could possibly do in that situation. You didn't hurt anybody. You didn't cause any harm, and way to go. I also want people to understand that this is the type of person she is. She's always looking out for other people. She's not selfish, not always thinking of herself, but it is making the best of the people that are in your circle, the people that are around you, the people that you are able to influence. Specifically those people that you're able to influence, because they would be younger than you. So any little nugget of information that you're giving them, if they respect you, they're taking that in, and they may think that, well, this is a person I want to emulate or imitate. So I want to be like that person. So your values are those things that are important to you, that help you to be the very best person you are today, and to continue to grow and develop and be the very best person you can be while you're still here on the earth.
That's awesome.
So, thank you. But, and young people need to start thinking about that too. I'm going to bring up this topic. Recently, there has been I think the state is Texas, but I could be wrong. They want to put the 10 Commandments in every classroom in every school. And they said, well, if you had the 10 Commandments, you wouldn't have as many bad kids. They wouldn't be doing all these things that they are actually doing. And so, that's a really interesting point, and it kind of bumps up against separation of church and state. And also, it throws out the window anybody else's religion that is not the Christian religion. So a lot of people will tell you that their values come from their religion. And that's fair, because a lot of things that you learn that are important to you and important about the community that you're living in and the environments that you operate in do come from your religious beliefs. And those values are a lot of times built from your religious beliefs, but you just kind of have to be careful that you are observing what's important to you and displaying what's important to you without crushing anybody else. So yeah, values are extraordinarily important.
So much so. I'll never forget when I was in college, because I've always thought of myself as a nice person and trying to do what's right and stuff like this. But I met I was in a fraternity. I met a fraternity brother who, his name was Jack. Never forget Jack, because Jack was someone who, just out of goodness of his heart, he'd figure out how to help you if you needed it. And so now it's not like I wouldn't help people. I did. I help people and stuff like this, but he showed me something when this happened. All right. So I had a big Ford older car and and it had little issues that appeared once in a while that mechanics seemed not to be able to figure out how to fix. And it had to do with, I bought it from someone who had been sitting in their backyard for a long time. All right. So it had all kinds of nature issues that would happen to it. And Jack his dad was some sort of amateur car racer in the North. And so he had learned how to fix any sort of engine type thing. And so one day he was talking with me, and he said, well, I can take a look at that. And I said, I'm not asking you to, because a lot of guys asked him for work on their cars, and Jack would just spend time. And he said, no. He goes, I'd be happy to look at it. And so anyway, this one day, there's a couple, he found some magic thing about my car that kind of made it work once in a while. But what happened this one day is I was running late. This is like my second time I was running late for work after school. All right, I got done with classes. I go out in my car and I can't get my car to start. And I'm like, and this is like the second day in a row where this has happened. The day before I got it to start, and eventually without any extra assistance. But it's like, you got to be kidding me! I'm going to be late for work again. And Jack happened to be walking by and he saw me. He goes, you got to. And actually, if I tell the whole story, I had just flung my wrench into the woods. I had banged my head. I was trying to tighten this thing, and then it busted loose, and I banged my hand on the hood of the car. And I was like, and I threw the wrench in the woods, and I went, lovely. And and he saw that all happen. And he come up and he goes, what's wrong, Steve? And I said, I can't get my car to start again. I'm going to be late for work. And he said, here, let me look. And he tried something, and it wasn't starting. He goes, here, and he throws me his keys. And he goes, I don't need my car the rest of the day. And I was like, Jack, you sure? And and it's not like I had driven his car before or anything like this. By the way, he had this, if I had an older car, he had a much older car that was huge. But he said, yeah, I don't need it. And my point is that I can tell you that before I met Jack, I would have never done that with somebody. I would have never given my car keys. We're fraternity brothers. Yes, he knew where I lived and all kinds of stuff like that. But it was a value about helping others that I had never thought to the extent. And I mean, he helped me to make sure that I didn't have to deal with my boss saying, second day, man, mm-hmm. And I'll never forget that. And it's helped me make decisions in helping others too. And I always remember Jack in that car and the keys. So sorry for the long story, but
that's great.
I love what you're talking about, because I think that too often we learn the wrong messages from some of our friends. So,
yes, we do.
But good stuff. All right. So, one of the things you do in your book is you share some advice for young people. And one part of these, it's called Words of Advice, is listen. Even if you do not take the advice that you're given by those you respect, listen anyway. Talk about listening for a minute.
Listening is important because we have these two little appendages on the side of our head called ears. And they're good for hearing, but so many things go inside of one ear and just come straight out the other side. It's just there. But when you stop and take the time to listen to a person, you learn things that can be important to you. It doesn't have to be important in that one moment, but down the road, you're going to come into a situation where that advice that they gave you, or that talk that they had with you, or that conversation that they had with you is going to make sense. And this is a lot of times parents talking to kids, trying to get them not to do something that the parents have done years ago, because for whatever reason, kids think, well, I'm 18 now, so I know everything and you don't. And that happened when, way back then when you were in the covered wagon. So you don't really know what you're talking about. But then they come to this situation and they start realizing, you know what, I should have listened to and taken the advice of that person that I was talking to, because they really had my best interest at heart. And not only, just listen that way, but listen actively. And when I say actively, uh, that's compared to multitasking when you ought to be listening. Because in the world that we live in today, and especially a lot of times at work, you're always under pressure to get all of these things done. And you're expected to multitask, just get it done. And there are times when you really, 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 really need to listen actively. I mean, with your whole body. I'm looking at you. I'm not, I don't have the television on. I'm not writing a note to somebody that I need to talk to a little bit later, but I'm actually listening to you. I think it helps you make better decisions. It also gives the person that you're having the conversation with the sense that, okay, I really am important to this person because this person is listening to everything that I'm actually saying. So I know they're getting what's going on with me. I'm also more likely to trust that person who is actively listening to me and what I have to say. And I know that what I'm saying to that person is important. That reminds me of performance reviews. I've been a member of a number of departments in corporate America and also in government. And one of the things that both of them don't do a good job at is giving performance reviews to their employees. They love to wait until, once a year, I don't care if it's in June or if it's in December, instead of having short, meaningful conversations with their employees throughout the year so they can understand what's going on with them, why they might be having a hard time completing a task, or is it that another department that is imperative to you getting your job done doesn't make time for you? They're not talking to you. What's going on with you? And then at the end of the year or whenever that annual performance review takes place, all of these transactions have happened throughout the year. But your boss sometimes is only looking at those things that happened within the last month or something that somebody has complained about, but all during the year they haven't been listening. So it makes for a more meaningful performance evaluation of your entire performance for the year instead of, that one little snapshot. So listening is imperative for a good performance and a good outcome. That's what I think.
So important, so important. And, you're talking to someone who I know I have 2 ears. And to say that I listen a lot of the time is probably a decent thing. My wife might disagree with me. All right. But, so important, though, because listening for understanding and acknowledgement, all kinds of stuff. It's such an important, I love that advice because that can keep you out of trouble as well as keep you on doing the things you're supposed to be doing and that type of thing. And good stuff. One of the things that in your words for advice that you also talk about is the idea of this. Run from an illegal activity like it is the plague, because it is. There are too many legal ways to make money other than resorting to illegal activity. So why do you think this advice needs to be said?
Most of the time, because people aren't listening when you tell them that. They just think, a lot of money.
Yeah.
I've got to have it. I'll do whatever it is it takes. And I think they hear that phrase. If they watch television, I watch probably too much television because I have favorite shows and favorite producers like Law and Order. I loved anything Law and Order, anything Dick Wolf. Yeah. But illegal activities, sometimes you get away with some things and people start to think, well, yeah, I don't really have to go to work for that. I can get what's his name to do this for me. And I can just go ahead and take whatever it is I want. I don't really have to go put in 8 hours and I'm making minimum wage. And I just don't want to do that because I have big taste and expensive taste. So I need a lot of money for a lot of reasons. That leads people into making not so good decisions. When I have taught a financial literacy class to a group of church kids, one of the things that I would tell them or ask them this one question, and I don't care how old they are, I just ask them the same question. I said, well, what's a lot of money to you? And each time I taught the class, if I had the kids that were elementary, middle school age, they would be like, well, $1 million is a lot of money to me. But every time I taught it to the high school level kids, they would say, oh, well, $500 is great. And I said, the second question I have to ask you is, what are you prepared to do to get it? And the elementary, middle school kids are saying, well, I'm just going to be rich. Okay, that's that's great. How are you going to do that? Are you going to work for somebody? I'm going to have my own business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. That's fantastic. So you have an idea and you want to go for it. The older kids would say, well, what they're really saying is, I'm going to work my parents or work my relatives to get to that $500 that I want. I'm not really going to do anything that's going to help me earn that money.
Right.
And that was scary to me. That was really scary. First of all, $500 is really small as compared to $1 million. And it's like, well, you're just going to work people that won't they wear off after a while? Because, as you get older, you stop looking as cute as you did when you were 5. So I'm not inclined to give you $500. So, and also leads me back to why I said run from illegal activity, because you're going to be best friends with the police for a long time in your life if all you want to do is do something illegal. So you're really not ever going to be able to do everything that you need to do if you're spending most of your time being friends with the police.
Right.
And it's just aggravating. So who wants to do that? I mean, I don't, and I know you don't, because it limits the things that you are able to actually do as an adult that you really want to do. So illegal activities aren't good. They also can end in your demise, whether we're talking jail or death. Those are two of the paths that just come to mind immediately. So you just don't want to do that and stay away from it, because as I said in the book, it's the plague. All you're doing is setting yourself up for failure, and you don't want to do that either. You want to be as successful as you can possibly be, because when you are a happy person, you're more likely to participate in activities that are not only good for you, but good for your family, good for your community, and hopefully good for the world.
So
I know that was a long answer, but
no, that's a good answer.
That's kind of how I felt about it.
Oh, I appreciate you talking about it, because it's a good answer. It's as a high school principal, I used to talk to kids about, every year we'd have different times during the year we'd talk with the groups of students, and with seniors, I was always talking to them at different intervals. And one of the things that we're talking about is finishing up on, getting stuff together and getting it finished. Well, one of the things that you have to say, I would talk to them about is that, every year I have someone who does something brilliant right before they graduate. And I would explain to them that brilliant is one of those words that you can say in different ways. You could say, oh, that's brilliant. Or you can say, oh, really brilliant, man. And like stealing a cell phone or doing something that illegal activity falls right in there, and then they don't graduate or the decision whether they graduate lies in my hands. And I'd say, don't do that. You just want to get this done. But it's like you're talking about the, making, it may seem like easy money, but it's like, is it really going to be? So I love what you're talking about there. Thank you.
Yeah, it's a really hard.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So much
Yeah.
so. All right. So we're getting close to finishing up. And one of the things I got to ask you about, let's talk a little bit about why you would want to encourage young people to pursue entrepreneurial endeavors, to go about setting up their businesses or trying to set up, their way of making money instead of working for somebody else. They work for themselves.
I'm going to take you back to when I was 10 years old. I've always been an entrepreneur. When I was 10, we lived on the southwest side of town in apartments called Allen Temple. And afros were a big thing for the guys back then. And since I could braid hair, I would braid their hair so that when they got ready to take the braids down, they'd have a nice shape to their afros. Braiding hair was also made me money with the lady who lived downstairs from us, who had 2 daughters, and she couldn't braid hair. She worked every day and actually didn't have time to, braid, do anything to her daughter's hair. So once a week, I braided their hair, and I earned $10 a week doing that.
Nice.
So I always had money. I did not want to always go and ask my father or my mother for money, because my father worked. He worked for General Motors. My mom worked for Fulton County. She also worked for Rich's department store when it was around, and also Davidson's when it was around. But I didn't want to ask them for money because there were 5 of us. They were always saying, well, we're going through hard times. I said, I'm tired of hearing that explanation, so I need to have my own money. So I was able to make my own money, and that was great. And the one thing that people don't tell you about being an entrepreneur or a small business owner is that what are you going to do when the need for your business idea doesn't exist anymore? How do you get out of it? So it's not enough to tell people that you ought to be an entrepreneur, which I do believe in, but you think about the whole picture, the big picture. How do you shut it down? As a consultant, if the need for diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't exist anymore, I can stop being a consultant. I haven't hired any people, so the only people that work for me would be somebody that I would hire as an independent contractor. So I'm not negatively impacting somebody else if I shut down my business. Because as I said, if your business idea doesn't exist anymore, you have to have a way, you have to have an exit plan, be able to get out of it. But to my original point, having multiple streams of income being an entrepreneur is probably one of the easiest ways to go about doing that. But it's much bigger than just having a great idea and finding some customers. You've got to deal with somebody called Uncle Sam. Yeah, because the buck stops with you as an entrepreneur. But it is so much fun. It's so great to enjoy doing an activity, whether it's baking, sewing, having a huge lawn business, just being able to come up with that idea and see it work. But don't forget about the fact that you always have a tax man and you've got to figure out your exit strategy as an entrepreneur. So I don't want people to forget that, because I hear just on a regular basis, whether I'm in the car with my husband and we're listening to the radio, somebody, some commercial comes on that talks about the importance of being an entrepreneur and everybody can do it. Well, yeah, everybody can do it, but is that something that you really want to do? One of the questions that you ask yourself as an entrepreneur is, am I the type of person that can work for myself and be disciplined? Or am I the type of person that I need to work for somebody because I'm not going to be bothered with all of the things that come with it? But still put that on your, front burner. Maybe it doesn't have to be something big. It could be something small that you like to do, but it's a second source of income to supplement your existing income. So being an entrepreneur is a great thing, and people should always explore it, but understand whether or not it's something that you really, really, really want to do.
That's awesome. And a big part of what you're saying is I had someone ask me one time, would you rather work for somebody? Would you rather work for yourself? And it's a trick question kind of, because you'd love to work for yourself, but will you be the right type of employee for yourself? I guess it's where I'm going with that, is that can you make it happen on your own? And it's because there's so many cool different ways out there today, especially technology has made it so possible to create, but also to make some ideas go away within a short period of time, and then you got to start over again, like you're saying. I love it. Thanks so much
for start over again. Yeah.
Thanks so much for talking about that, because I think sometimes you just get one mindset, but there's some different routes to being successful out there. So good stuff. As we're wrapping up, Sonja, where can listeners find more information about you, your book, A Kid's Guide to Life Choices, and what you do?
Well, the book is available on Amazon and iTunes and Barnes & Noble. So any of those three avenues, because the book is actually published by Newman Springs Publishing. They are going to have, when we're done wrapping up here, they will take the link to this podcast and post it on their social media.
Nice.
And I may also do the same thing. But if you really want to talk to me, my phone number is 678-467-4516. And my email address is H as in Harold, O as in Olive, L as in Larry, A as in Apple, 903@AOL.com. And I have dated myself now because I don't think there are very many people that have an AOL account anymore. But I love AOL.
Going strong. Nice. Awesome.
I'm always happy to talk to people. For Passionate About Diversity, you can actually just go to the website, www.passionateaboutdiversity.com. And you can see that my little spiel on human capital management and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's always in progress. So I'm always trying to do something to the website. And I have not come up with a way to actually do my YouTube channel that I'd like to do for the book, but that's coming.
Excellent. Good stuff. Well, I will have this information in the show notes, so it's easy for someone to come find you. And good luck with the YouTube. I understand, especially sometimes it's get the idea, got to push it forward, and good luck. It'll happen for you. So
thank you.
Because you got great information to share, and I appreciate it. I got two last questions for you, Sonja, and
okay.
The first one goes like this. These are questions I like to ask my guests, and the first one is, how do you keep going when so much is going on that you may want to quit?
I like living. So the alternative is not a positive thing for me right now. So you figure out what it is you really want to do first and get that done. I don't try to eat an entire elephant. I try and do it one piece at a time. So I think people get into trouble and just quit when they try and do everything all at the same time. One example is this. Microsoft will, they send out several patches or fixes to their applications whenever they've made a change. Now, if they wanted to, they could have just said, I'm not going to release anything else until I get this thing absolutely perfect. They would not be in business today. So you do what you can with what you have and what knowledge you have and whatever you're able to afford to buy, and just keep going until you fix things and just keep it going. And I don't want to quit. I don't ever want to quit because, as I said at first, I like living.
Nice. I like that. Great advice. Thank you so much. Last question. Do you have a teacher in your past who made a difference in your life? If so, who was it? And what would you say if given the chance to say thank you?
I have a couple of teachers. One was elementary school and one was in high school. I did not go to middle school. It was not an option when I was in that age range. I'll talk about the high school teacher first. Her name was Miss Brown, and she is probably one of the true reasons that I went to Mercer to become an accountant. It was I don't know that you'd actually call it a business class, but we did a lot of work, and she introduced the financial statements to us. And I'd never heard anything about that, even when I was in junior achievement, because junior achievement was done differently when I was in school than it is now. But Miss Brown and the people who were in charge for junior achievement. And in my elementary days, I had a teacher named Miss Perry that was instrumental in me understanding the human body. She got in trouble for doing it with our principal, but she had a very clinical conversation with us about the differences between boys and girls. And I really appreciated her having that conversation because it supplemented what my mother taught me. And I think I made smart decisions based on that information that she provided to our class.
That's awesome. Very cool. And I appreciate you sharing and telling us about them. And Sonja, thank you so much for sharing your work and your book, A Kid's Guide to Life Choices. You have an awesome focus. I love it. Wishing you the best in all you do.
Thank you so very much for having me. I've really enjoyed our conversation, and maybe we'll get a chance to do it again.
Hey, you have been listening to Teaching Learning Leading K12, a podcast to help you help kids achieve their dreams. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators, podcasts by educators. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is a member of the podcast network based in Canada called Voice Ed Radio. Voice Ed Radio, your voice is right here. The opinions expressed on Teaching Learning Leading K12 are those of the guests and host. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is intended to share ideas, advice, and suggestions. Teaching Learning Leading K12 is produced for educational purposes. Hey, thanks for listening. It would be awesome if you visited my website at stephenmiletto.com and connected with me, left a review, and listened to more episodes. And by the way, you could also share it with your friends, with your family, and your colleagues. Thanks so much. You're awesome.